If you've ever played the 90s game where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, then you may be familiar with this guy. But outside of that, tapirs are actually pretty obscure, which is weird because they're still around today. There's about 4 to 5 different species, and they re the only surviving members of an ancient group of mammals called no, it's not a type of Pokemon. It's a group that includes some of the most iconic mammals in history, like horses, rhinoceroses, and of course, tapirs. This group also includes several now extinct megafauna, like the giant Irish moose and the which was kind of like a horse but with giant claws instead of hooves. The oldest fossils we have of parasodactyls are from the Eocene, which is way back when our primate ancestors were still living in trees, and the modern horse was just starting to evolve. And what's really strange about this is that despite being around for 55 million years and being a mostly unchanged lineage, they're practically unknown to the general public. So let's talk about them. Welcome to my channel. Tapirs belong to the order Perissodactyla, which means odd-toed ungulates. Ungulates are just four-legged mammals that are hoofed or cloven-hoofed. Odd-toed ungulates are in contrast to even-toed ungulates, which include things like deer, cows, camels, and hippos. In the case of tapirs, they have one large central toe flanked by 2 smaller side toes connected by a webbing. Their other 3 toes are reduced to nubs and don't touch the ground. They're the largest land mammal in South America, and there are currently 5 recognized species. There's the Brazilian tapir, which lives in both Brazil and Peru, the mountain tapir found in the Andes, the Malay tapir, which is found in Southeast Asia, the Indian tapir, which used to be widespread across India, Sri Lanka, and southern China until recently, and the Bornean tapir found on the island of Borneo. All these species are threatened, either critically or by CITES Appendix 2, meaning that while they're not yet endangered, they could soon be if trade and poaching continue. 3 of these species are also listed as vulnerable on the IUCN Red List. The reason why tapirs are so uncommon is probably due to their elusive nature. Like other large mammals, tapirs need a lot of food and water to survive, which means that their range is limited to lowland tropical forests. And unlike other large mammals, they're mostly active during the day, so they spend their time in the shade of the forest canopy, only emerging at night to feed on fruit. This nocturnal behavior means that they're rarely seen by humans, making them even more mysterious. Tapirs are also solitary animals except during mating season and give birth every 2 to 3 years after a gestation period of between 12 and 13 months. Their calves can walk within an hour of being born and are weaned off their mother's milk after 6 months. Adult tapirs weigh between 330 and 660 pounds, have a shoulder height of up to 8 feet, and can live up to 30 years in the wild. But despite how large and plant-eating tapirs are, they are surprisingly good swimmers. They spend a lot of time in rivers and swamps, and can easily outrun humans on foot. Historically, they were much more widespread and could be found as far north as North America and Europe. But somehow they made it all the way to Africa, where they evolved into a new group of mammals called Not kidding! Somehow they evolved again into a new group of mammals called parasodactyls, which includes the modern tapir. In fact, there are so many similarities between these 2 groups that scientists used to think that they were related, but studies of their DNA have shown that they're not. Instead, they're as closely related to each other as we are to lemurs. Despite having been around for 55 million years and being a mostly unchanged lineage, and I mean, sure, it's hard to change much when you're basically a chubby pig with a trunk, but still, one of the strangest things about tapirs is that they seem to have changed very little over the last 55 million years, which is surprising given how quickly mammals like dogs and horses have evolved. One explanation for this is that they've occupied a relatively stable ecological niche since the Eocene. Basically, they haven't had much pressure to adapt. Another explanation is that their large size has given them some protection against extinction. A study published in 2011 found that larger mammals are less likely to go extinct than smaller mammals, and this is probably because they require fewer resources to survive. It also means that they tend to have slower metabolisms, which leads to slower reproductive rates. Slower reproductive rates can lead to inbreeding, which can make populations more vulnerable to extinction. But for whatever reason, tapirs have managed to avoid this fate, but in the future, they might not be so lucky. the biggest threat to tapirs is habitat loss due to deforestation. This is especially true in Brazil, where 75% of the Brazilian Amazon rainforest has been cleared for agricultural land, timber, and mining. As their habitat continues to shrink, tapirs will become more vulnerable to hunting and poaching. In some areas, people hunt tapirs for their meat, and in others, they're killed because they're seen as a nuisance, like when they destroy crops or trample villages. They're also occasionally captured for the illegal pet trade, and there are a few unconfirmed reports of people trying to keep tapir leather as a fashion accessory. So yeah, tapirs are already struggling, but things could get much worse. Climate change is expected to cause major shifts in vegetation patterns, which could force tapirs to migrate to higher altitudes in search of food. But as temperatures rise, there is a possibility that diseases that are currently found in tropical areas could start to spread into the temperate zone, bringing with them deadly pathogens. Tapirs are also susceptible to parasites like ticks and mites, which can carry diseases like anaplasmosis and ehrlichia. And finally, as with many other species, pollution and mercury accumulation could pose a serious threat to their health. So yeah, tapirs aren't doing great. And to be honest, it's pretty hard to see things getting better anytime soon. We know that tapirs are incredibly shy and elusive, which makes it difficult for researchers to estimate their population size. In the Brazilian Amazon, it's estimated that there are only 500 to 2,500 mature individuals left. And in the Andes, there are thought to be fewer than 500. Even in Southeast Asia, where they refound in greater numbers, it is hard to say how many there are since they re so hard to spot in the wild. But at least they've got plenty of fans. That's right. Tapirs have quite the fan base. After being featured in Carmen, San Diego, the Global Wildlife Conservation Organization started a social media account for the tapir, and it has racked up 185,000 followers. They've also got a Twitter account with 27,000 followers. To put that into perspective, that's more followers than a certain someone. The Global Wildlife Conservation Organization has also partnered with the online gaming platform Twitch to stream live footage of a tapir named Darwin. If you ask me, it's way more entertaining than watching paint dry, which is what I always tell my mom whenever she suggests it as a fun activity. But I am gone. Now finish this video with a quote from one of the people interviewed in the Grist article. On the future of tapirs, he says, if the next 55 million years of evolution is going to look anything like the last 55 million years, we should probably keep an eye on them. Thanks for watching. See you next time.